So we talked about how to turn the steering wheel, whether you use the push-pull method or the hand-over-hand method. And now we should talk about how much do we need to turn the steering wheel if we're going into a left turn or a right turn. So if I'm going into a right turn, if I were to use the push-pull method for this demonstration, and I put the car into park, I've got my signal on, checking to see if it's clear. I'll grab the steering wheel at the 12, bring the steering wheel over to the right as much as I can, and then resume with the left hand. And if I were to just stop the car, you will see that I have used one whole turn in the steering wheel. But this was a really sharp turn, right? I was coming out of a parking stall and I'm trying to get onto the right side of the road as soon as possible. You shouldn't really need to use a whole turn on the steering wheel depending on the situation. So if I were to now straighten out the car or straighten out the steering wheel back to center, if I were to demonstrate this going into a right turn, just notice how much I'm using on the steering wheel. So right about there should get me onto my new road. And this works out to about 3/4 of a turn. So this is a quarter, this is another quarter, and this is another quarter. So you really shouldn't have to use more than 3/4 of a turn going into a right turn. Now, when you're doing this maneuver in a parking lot, the lanes are smaller, the aisles are smaller, so you're gonna have to make slightly sharper turns than when you are on some of the main roads where you might not need to make such a sharp turn. So just keep in mind that you might only need to turn 3/4 of a turn on the steering wheel at the most when you're going into these right turns. So let's try this one more time. So again, I've got about 3/4 of a turn on this steering wheel. So to demonstrate this one more time, I'm going into this right turn. And I've managed to kind of come onto this new road with about 3/4 of a turn on the steering wheel. And to do another immediate right turn, this is the straight position on my steering wheel. This is about a whole turn on that steering wheel. So it depends on the speed that you're taking the turn and the shape of the curb as you're approaching. So I'm coming up to this right turn. Again, it works out to about 3/4 of a turn. And it'll be the same thing more or less for a left turn. So to demonstrate this for a left turn, signal, mirror, mirror, shoulder check, coming up to the yield sign, and this works out to about 3/4 of a turn on the steering wheel. So if I'm going into this left turn, signal, mirror, mirror, shoulder check, covering my brakes, slowing down a bit, and I've used roughly about 3/4 of a turn on the steering wheel. And it's the same concept one more time. Signal, left, and 3/4. So it works out to about 3/4 whether you're using this for a left turn or right turn. Now again, if you're turning onto a wider road, because you have more distance to cover as you're going into this turn, you might be able to get away with only half a turn on the steering wheel. So the 3/4 is kind of the maximum you should use. How this differs from how new drivers steer is they tend to oversteer going into these turns. So for example, they will be going into a right turn They think, oh my God, I gotta make this turn. So they turn really sharp and then they go on the curb over there, which is not what we want. And if you understeer and you're like, well, I have to have my hands on the steering wheel, so I'll just go like this and hope for the best. Well, you're gonna come up short, right? You're not gonna be able to make the turn. So your hands need to be fluid and ready to respond depending on the shape of the road that you're turning onto. So if we're turning right again, that will do it.